On March 6, 2020, I became the world's first person to legitimately earn 1 billion bells and obtain the post model. This was a dream of mine since I was a kid, and it was an incredible experience to pull it off. I've already made a video on this accomplishment, so if you'd like to know more about that, click the link in the description. After obtaining the post model, I knew I ultimately wanted to collect every item in the game in 100% Animal Crossing in the same town. It would therefore become the world's first legitimate 100% completed file. Since I've already made a video on becoming a billionaire and getting the post model, this road to 100% Animal Crossing series will cover everything else in the game. Let's get started. Animal Crossing is an open-ended sandbox-style game which runs in real time with no specific goal other than paying off your house debt by selling items and earning bells. So what exactly does it mean to 100% Animal Crossing? That's a good question. Well, if we use the 100% speedrun definition, a player has a 100% completed file when they obtain all the golden tools, all the player statues, all the Nook upgrades, the extra bridge, a completed museum, and a full catalog. I agree with this definition, and not just because I helped come up with it, but because it meets a broader definition of 100%, which is to collect everything and acquire all permanent upgrades in a game. Following this broader definition, I actually went a little crazy and decided to do everything possible in this game legitimately, beyond the established 100% definition. This includes items that don't appear in the catalog such as Ice Climber, Mario Bros, all the fruit, and more. This also includes all other permanent structures such as the bug plaque and fish weather vane that appear on the player houses after you've caught all the bugs and fish, and even completing all the permanent dialogues such as befriending Sable. So yeah, I went a bit crazy with my 100% definition. Alright, well, with a defined goal established, now some rules need to be set to uphold the integrity of Animal Crossing. These rules include no glitches, no third-party products, only Nintendo official Nook codes may be used, which I'll cover later, and time traveling is only permitted by advancing time forward no more than 1 day at a time. And the only reason why I allowed time traveling in the first place was for the sake of streaming my challenge. I also added a not-so-critical rule of only allowing one town, with the exception of getting Nookingtons. I initially added this rule for the Billion Bell Challenge so I wouldn't be able to sell turnips in other towns, and I decided to keep the same rules for the 100% challenge. I believe these rules are fair and uphold the integrity of 100%ing Animal Crossing the way the developers intended. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Oh, and while you're down there, you might as well drop a like on this video and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Okay, that's enough on the definitions and rules. Let's get into it. So after pulling off the incredible feat of getting the post model, I knew my next goal had to be to obtain all the other model items in the game, to create an epic model item house layout, recreating this town. A model item is an item which represents a structure or a town feature in an Animal Crossing town. The post model, for example, is a miniature model of the post office. Other model items include the house model, shop model, grass model, all the flower models, and many more. The second most challenging item in the game to obtain is the museum model, which requires the player to complete the museum to obtain. This is accomplished by donating everything that can be donated to the museum, which includes all 40 fish, 40 bugs, 25 fossils, and 15 paintings. The fish and bugs have seasonal times in which they can be caught, so generally this takes around a year of in-game play to catch everything. The fossils are obtained by digging fossils up around town each day and mailing them off for appraisal. That one doesn't take as long, but can still be challenging. The paintings, however, are by far the most difficult group of items to complete, as they're just regular furniture items, and there are a lot of furniture items in this game, and each painting requires a good deal of luck to find. So my general strategy moving forward is to actually just play Animal Crossing 1 day at a time like a casual player would, and catch bugs, catch fish, dig up fossils, and collect stuff. I need to make sure I attend holiday events when the time comes, since Tortimer, the town mayor, often hands out model items as gifts during these events. And I just have to be careful not to miss any seasonal stuff. Otherwise, I would have to progress an entire year to have access to it again. So the first thing I do after obtaining the post model is work on picking the weeds and regrowing trees around my town. I do this for a few reasons. For one, it would just be nice to have trees again in this sad, barren town. But more importantly, I need to work towards improving the town rating in order for fish and bugs to spawn regularly again. Typically, fish are guaranteed to spawn in an acre with water, but with a low town rating, this probability actually drops to 50%. Bugs work slightly differently, but their overall spawn rate halves as well. A low town rating is caused by many acres having a lack of trees, too many weeds, or trash lying on the ground. Trash in this case being empty cans, boots, or tires that you can fish up. You can check your general town rating by visiting the wishing well and asking how things are. However, this won't give you an exact value, only a ballpark range of your town rating. You have to calculate an exact value yourself by summing the score of each acre. Each of the 30 acres in the game are individually rated either 0, 0.5, or 1. If you have any trash in the acre, or if you have 3 or more weeds, -1 for each planted flower, it gets a score of 0 and automatically fails a perfect town rating. To get a value of 0.5 or 1, the acre must have no trash, 2 or less weeds, -1 for each planted flower, and have between 9 to 16 trees within its boundaries. If the acre has 12 to 14 trees, it gets a score of 1, otherwise it gets a score of 0.5. A town with at least 17 points is considered a perfect town. And there are some semi-exempt acres which still require the trash and weeds conditions to be met, but don't need at least 9 trees in them. These include the wishing well, lake, train station, player house acres, and it also includes the beach acres, which need at least 4 trees planted in them. However, you don't need a perfect town rating for the fish and bug spawn rate to go back to normal. You only need a town rating value of around 8. Honestly, it feels pretty good to bring some life back to this once capitalism-ridden town, whose only purpose was to make money quickly. Slowly but surely, nature heals, and the fish and bugs start returning to town. Since it happens to be July when I start the road to 100%, I get to work catching the July bugs and fish. It doesn't take long until I've caught all the nighttime July fish that I need, which mainly include the catfish, giant catfish, eel, and arowana. But other notable fish that would be nice to catch during this time include the sweetfish, angelfish, dace, large bass, and arapaima. Next, I donate everything to Blathers to work toward completing the museum. Fast forward to the next day, and I catch the daytime July fish, which include the bluegill, pale chub, and giant snakehead. Afterwards, I catch the remaining bugs, including the pond skater, jewel beetle, ladybugs, butterflies, dragonflies, cicadas, and other beetles. All the while, I have to donate everything I catch. Just to get an idea of this process, let's sit through a typical Blathers dialogue together. While Blathers may be digressing, I am disagreeing. I know, Zack Attack. You need a second switch to be able to do things like that. Cicadas, what can one say about these odd insects? They're certainly noisy. Noisy enough, I should say. Their horrid caterwauling is awfully irritating, you know, about as musical as a train wreck. I'm sure that the cicadas have quite valid reasons for such boisterous behavior, but I dare say there are limits, and they have those membranes on their abdomens which vibrate to create those disturbing tones. Odious! Wow. I bet as a child, you understood 50% or less of that dialogue. I barely understood it today. So yeah, imagine doing that 100 more times. Anyway, at this point, a ton of buried items have accumulated around town that I ignored while getting a billion bells. So I decided to dig them all up to declutter my town. Most of these buried items are gyroids that are needed for a 100% file, so it's important I save them all for later. Keep in mind while I work toward this goal, I also collect a few other rare items along the way that are eventually necessary to obtain for a 100% file. I may not explicitly cover the order in which I obtain every item, but I will cover every group of items at some point in this series. So don't worry if you're wondering where I suddenly got an aerobics radio, or a tribal mask, or some other rare item. They will all be discussed at some point. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed by now, I actually ran a fundraiser for a weekend during the beginning of my road to 100% to help real-life animals. I had fun incentive goals such as designing patterns, writing letters, playing NES games, and more. But I'll cover that in the next episode as I continue working toward completing the museum. That'll be all for the first episode. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.